Hi there, and welcome to episode 11 of The Builder's Office. My name's Hugh Maastricht. I run a business called New Realm Homes down here in Melbourne, and I want to thank you, and I hope you enjoy this cracking episode that I'm going to be doing with a cracking guy from Northern Queensland. I believe it's Northern Queensland, isn't it, Joel?
Central Queensland.
Central Queensland.
Close
Ah,
enough.
well,
It's hot.
it's hot. It's hot. It's
It's
a
hot.
good spot to get to, isn't it?
Yes. The boys have been on a few calls with them lately, and they're like, "Why you got no shirt on? It's bloody freezing down here." I'm like, mate, it's 34 degrees. It's freaking hot, and there's like 80% humidity. So yes.
Wonderful spot in the world to be, that's for sure. We'll just crack into it a little bit. So Joel he runs a business called Refined Space Constructions up in it's Rockhampton, isn't it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
And so Central Queensland, and he brought him on today because we wanted to have a little bit of a chat about surprises and budget unknowns that can happen during projects. And because we have been shining a little bit of a light on mental health and how it affects not only the people doing the work but the homeowners as well, wanted to have a little bit more of a chat with Joel about some of this sort of stuff because he does experience the full gamut that can come from building homes and doing renovations and smaller projects as well. And his experiences in the industry can certainly open eyes to what can be some of the better things that you can experience and get out of your building projects. So without keeping anybody in any further suspense, I'll introduce Joel, and I'd love to hear a little bit about who you are and where you've come from and what you get up to.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Hugh. Glad I could be on the podcast. Yeah, like Hugh said, I'm from Central Queensland in Rockhampton. I own a building company that I've been in here. I've been building sort of out by myself for the last 5 years, and a lot of the stuff we do is renovations, which has sort of struck the conversation about budget and budget unknowns. I was sort of talking with Hugh off air about just some of the common things that people might be unaware of or what to expect when they're going through and building or renovating, and kind of what expectations they kind of need to be aware of that the builder should set as well. So
that's wonderful, Joel. It's wonderful. So you've experienced quite a lot, and I think that sort of leads into a little bit of the first sort of little discussion point that I wanted to crack into. So as we've seen over the last little while, we've seen some pretty wild things in the last couple of years, and things have changed and they've evolved into essentially what is a quite considerably different building industry. And so we've seen a lot of price rises and changes in products over the last couple of years in every part of the home. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experiences have been, what things that you've seen, and how the last couple of years have really affected not only yourself but the homeowners in the builds in the last couple of years?
yeah, sure. I think probably the biggest thing is, like, I'm not a massive volume builder, so I don't have probably some of the implications that I see a lot of bigger builders have that of, ordering 100 frames and per year, or doing 100 houses per year, whatever they may look like, because their margins are a lot tighter, which is obviously gives them less wiggle room, because they're down to the cent almost when they're pricing stuff with people who are building if they're in that first home buyers market and they're building volume, they're relying on volume to make money. So I haven't had as many delays with that sort of stuff, and I guess bad experiences. There has been delays with, we did one house that we had to do an extension on, and we had to wait 6 months from when we ordered the frames and trusses to be able to do. So we had to, we had to shuffle things around and move stuff around so that, and I think it's more important to let the homeowner know just about what's happening in the back end rather than just doing things so they're aware. So as long as everyone's on the same page, and I think it's important to let them know as the homeowner to say, hey, we've had delays on trusses, it's going to be another 6 months, let's just push the whole job back to make sure that things can get done together in a reasonable time frame, so we're not pulling your house half apart and then leaving it open for 6 months while we're waiting on frames and trusses because we just can't get there. So going back to your question with price rises, like that's been a tricky one. I'm sure for every person, whether it be builder, supplier, homeowner, whatever that may look like it's just been out of control. Like, you know, we had one price rise in insulation go up in 80% in a month's notice, and it's like, what about the jobs that are 6 months in front that you've got to try and where's almost double the cost go to be able to go back? And I think it's important that as a builder, we need to go back to the client as the homeowner and go back to them and say, hey, I think it's more about open, honest, clear communication, saying, the builder can't wear it. I know it's frustrating as a homeowner, but like, I don't know, like you see it on the news all the time, how many builders are going bust because like there's only so much a builder can wear before it goes backwards, and then, they're gone. Next one comes into line. So I think it's important as a homeowner to make sure that you're having that conversation with your builder, and your builder should be bringing that conversation to you. Like, it shouldn't be on the homeowner's responsibility. But I think it's just to make sure that people have got a bit of a buffer in their budget. Like, don't extend yourself to the earth's end, so that if something changes or something, a price increase goes up, or, something is unknown that's found in behind a wall that couldn't have been seen before you started. Like, I always try and tell people to keep a 5% buffer to make sure that just got a little bit of wiggle room up your sleeve. Because renos, it happens all the time. Like, it's just, there's always stuff you see in old houses that just appear and pop up that no one was expecting it to be there. Like, ideally, if we could walk into a house and all the frames are open, you can see through all the walls, perfect. But unfortunately, it's not like that when you start. So, yes, tricky one.
It certainly is tricky. And on those funny little things that we do experience when we are building, obviously when we engage clients and we sign contracts and we go through all that information up front, and just making sure that we're keeping that line of communication open so that those conversations about price rises or price reductions, and certainly passing those things to each other, and just making sure that everybody's sort of aware of it right up front. Have you been getting, like I have you been getting the notifications from suppliers throughout projects that have been, we're going to be giving you a price rise on of X amount, like yesterday, I get one from our concrete supplier saying, "Yep, well, guess what, guys? We're increasing the price by $30 a cubic metre right across Victoria." And depending on the supplier, whether it's Hanson or Boral or Broadway and Frame, whoever it might be, we're getting those right across the board from $25 to $50 a cubic metre. That's going to increase the cost exponentially, and they send that to us a month out from when they're going to do it. And these are one of the things that we experience as the builders, that we get these notifications. And what are we meant to do with that when we've got a contract in place with clients that may not necessarily have much wriggle room to allow, let's just say, a slab that's going in that's got 100 cubic metres of concrete, and you get a $30 or $50 a cubic metre rise, then you're adding quite a considerable chunk of cash onto a contract that might not even have that much wiggle room. And like you said before, the fun thing when it comes to the volume builders is they're working on such tight margins already, that little price rise could really throw a spanner in the works for all of us. Yeah, sure. And I think it's going back to just making sure that everyone's on the same page. But like I've had, that's probably one of the issues. It's not like, hey, here's your price rise in 6 months' time. It's like, hey, here you go. It's 2 months if you're lucky. And quite often as builders, we're working on a 6 to 12 month schedule, and it makes it very difficult to be able to, factor that in. The only way I've found around this, this is kind of like opening the curtain behind the door here, is like in the project when we're pricing things, is allowing a little bit extra as a percentage to cover costs, because it's no other way to do it. Like, if we're pricing to the dollar on materials and they're moving, like they've slowed down a little bit now compared to what it has been, but I'm always making sure my prices from the supplier price list is in front of what they're actually selling me the product for, because that's the only way I've found to be around it. Yeah. Have you been finding that you're getting a little bit of extra assistance when it comes to those cost increases that are coming from suppliers and trades. Do you find that you're getting any assistance from any of the industry bodies to actually be a little bit in front of that, or are you finding that from other builders or directly from the suppliers?
Nah, like I've just like some suppliers won't even send you an email to say they've update their price. You get a bill and you're like, why is that like 20% dearer than what I normally pay? Oh, the price has gone up. I'm like, well, were you going to tell us? Like, so I guess you just learn to manage it. Like, I haven't got the information from anywhere else. I'm like, well, the only way I can see around this is, making sure we're in front of the suppliers. And when you're pricing things before you go to sign a contract, you just double check all your pricing to make sure that, everything's good, and you just have the conversation with the client. If something goes up and it's like, hey, look, I'm sorry, can't do nothing about it. Like, the suppliers come to me and I've just kind of got to pass on the cost because it just is what it is. Like, there's nothing worse than going to buy a car for 40 grand that you envisioned paying 40 grand for, and then you go to the dealership and go the day you go to purchase it and it's 45 for the same thing. Like, I get how it's so frustrating, but it's like, you don't want your builder going broke at the same time. Like, that's not ideal for both parties, in the fact that you push the builder out of business, but also all your warranties, and you can just flip your renovation or new home into an absolute nightmare if your builder goes bust halfway through your renovation. Like, insane. Insurance, home warranty insurance only covers so much, and 99% of the time it's not enough to finish building your house.
I completely agree. And down here in Victoria, with the number of builders that we've actually seen going bust, and last week I was catching up with a group of builders at an event, and we were having a chat about some of the projects that some of them have taken on where the builders have actually gone bust. And one of them was one of the larger ones, one of the well-known builders in Melbourne that went bust, and they've taken over the project from them. And it's interesting because the clients, that they'd forked out quite a considerable amount of money, only to find out that the warranty insurance wasn't even close to being able to cater for finishing the home off. And
yeah, I think ours is like, you pay phenomenal, like, especially when you're building your home, it's like upwards of 8 to 10 grand plus, and like the coverage is like $200,000 max or something. Like, and it still increases the dearer the more. So it works on a percentage. So the more, say for example, it might be 1%, or sorry, 5% over $100,000, you'd pay $5 grand home warranty insurance. It still keeps going up if you're building a $600,000 home at a percentage. But the thing that is frustrating for a homeowner, I find, is that if something happens, they're only going to cover $200,000. So I haven't checked that in a while, but from last time I checked, that was the limit. And it's like, if you're building a $600,000 house and you only get the concrete slab down, what happens with the other, other money that the warranty insurance doesn't cover? So,
and each state has a different. Each state has a different capacity.
Yes, yeah.
In their insurance, the home warranty insurance. So like in Victoria, I think we've got 300 or 350,000. New South Wales I think it's about 250.
Yep.
So it's much of a muchness on if your builder goes broke, and God forbid, we don't want that to happen at all.
No.
But God forbid that does happen, then yeah, you can easily get stitched up and not be able to finish your home, and then you're stuck in contract crisis talks with either a lawyer or a liquidator for a builder that's gone bust or
that has no money. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. So.
A scary proposition, that's for sure. So yeah, you've seen quite a bit of change along the way, it's safe to say, and I'm 100% sure that I've seen just as much change as what you have when it comes to all the unknowns that are out there. But with the unknowns that we have been experiencing, did you see much of a change in the dynamics of the relationships with your clients?
I think yeah. Oh, I'm a pretty upfront, straightforward kind of person anyway. So, I'm always I'll tell them what's going on and what's happening in the background. So I think, probably one of the biggest concerns I get in my inquiry forms at the moment is rising price costs and material increases. Like that is probably the number one concern that people have at the moment. So I don't think the dynamic of the relationship changed. I think how you explained what was going on needed to change a little bit. Not so much the relationship. I guess it was just more about saying, hey, this is what's happening. This is why we basically go this way and have to price things before we sign the contract to double check to make sure that we haven't had any increases. And, you know, and the other option I've found around it now is that once a contract's signed, just order the materials. And if you've got a storage facility or a shed or somewhere the homeowner can store that stuff, I say, hey, look, this is the best way to go about it. As soon as you sign the contract, let's order all the materials and get them delivered. Have them sitting at your place. And because a lot of stuff I do is renos, whether it be bathrooms, major extensions, renovate, whatever that is. But it's not like we're having new frames sitting on the ground for 6 months. Like there's normally somewhere they can put them at their house and all that sort of stuff as well. Yes, you can have a little issue, like issues with warranty from purchase date. Like that is the only downside of that. Like if you're purchasing 6 months before you're starting a renovation, you've already chewed 6 months of your warranty before you even put it in the wall. But it's better than paying, you know, an extra 10 or 20% on your product increase on materials or whatever that may be. So that's probably the biggest thing I've found, to try and put certainty back in the homeowner to make sure that they're not going to get hit with any extra prices throughout a contract, because legally as a builder we're supposed to fulfill the contract anyway. There's no clause in there that says, hey, rise and fall costs. I know commercial do, but you know, some builders I know may be putting in special conditions now saying, you know, any rise or fall will be adjusted as per whatever the increased cost is. So, or putting in allowances for certain things that may be subject to increase in price. So, yeah, that's not so much about the dynamic of the relationship. I think it's just working together to find out a better way to get around it. Working together as a team.
Yeah, definitely. So you, in a way, I guess where I was sort of going with that was, have you noticed that the dynamics of the relationships with clients has changed significantly just since the start of COVID, because people are becoming a little bit more aware of the situation and they're needing and learning to be a little bit more informed about what's going on. So then they're open to the conversation instead of, say, pre-COVID, where we had lots of people that would keep all their cards close to their chest and they wouldn't let a lot of that stuff out, where nowadays we're finding, as I'm sure you are, that we're being able to sort of have those deeper conversations with people and be able to get a lot more understanding a lot quicker off the bat.
Yeah, yeah. When you say it like that, like that's, yeah, definitely people are aware of it, because it's not just the building industry. It's everywhere. It's throughout groceries, it's fuel, so people know what's happening. So yeah, people are open to the conversation around, we don't know what, and the conversation kind of leads to, we don't know what we can afford. You know, due to rising costs, we have no idea what things cost. We're trying to work out what we can do, what we can't do. So yeah, they are open to what's going on, but also, yeah, they're aware of it. People know. So, because it's not just one industry.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that kind of leads to, like, you know, the conversation around budget with a lot of clients. Like, I find the mindset around budget is we just want to know what it costs so we can figure out what we can do, which I think is the most backwards way of doing it. Because quite often you need to figure out what you're comfortable spending to be able to then go, all right, let's figure out what we can fit in there. Because 9 out of 10 times everyone wants to go to the Lamborghini shop and get the most flashiest, fastest looking car, to find out that they're never going to take it home. And we should be shopping in a Ford Ranger or Holden Commodore or somewhere that we just need to make sure we're shopping in the right shop.
Yeah.
And you don't do that by figuring out what things cost. You do that the other way around by working out what's your comfortable spending budget. All right, let's look at shopping in this shop because that one's completely out of range. So there's no point wasting their time and money to do that. I find it's a conversation that needs to be had, I think, or every builder needs to have with the client, because everyone has an expectation in their head of what things. They'll say they don't know what it costs, but they have an expectation of what they think it will cost, because quite often you can start throwing figures at them and then all of a sudden you see the eyes go and you go, that's too high, is it? And then yes, like let's try and, we're getting somewhere. We now know where's too much. Because as a builder, I find we need to know that. It's super important, because then we can guide you in a direction to say, hey, well, if you're wanting to spend 20 grand on a deck that's big enough to hold a family and got a roof over it, well, it's not enough money to be able to do that. Like, maybe can the budget be increased, or maybe we just look at revamping what you've got there, or is it like, is there another option? Because, we need to try and tailor to suit what you're after, which is what I find is an important question to be able to determine, through a first meeting you have with the client. So,
yeah, that's brilliant. I totally agree with you when it comes to all of that, and see a lot of that unknown stuff that people go into a conversation with the builder thinking, oh, we should be able to get it for this, we should be able to get it for that. And the builder's like, oh, we should be able to do this, we should be able to do that for you. And they don't have that honest conversation with the clients or the prospective clients about what the possibilities are. And also find that with some of the other professionals in the industry, not naming names, but we could if we wanted to. But it's one of those things where finding out and being honest about that information with the clients right up front seems to get a lot more trust and understanding between everybody involved, and that's always going to be better, and it'll always get a better outcome doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think, and going back to what you just said with the other people in the industry, like designers, architects, like they're brilliant at their job. And I know some people as a homeowner think, oh, I know what I need to do first. I need to go and see a designer or get some plans drawn up or whatever that the case be. And they'll touch on budget. They touch on it briefly, but very rarely is what the designer designs to what's their budget was is blown out of the park. Like, I remember one couple I had a conversation with, and I said to them, they had the plans done. I said, look, hey, had the meeting. I said, is there a budget you guys are trying to stick to, or you've got a budget in mind? They're like, well, we never really set one. I was like, oh, that's kind of dangerous, because, and like, oh, if we had to throw some figures in the air, what would you be thinking? And they sort of threw some figures around, and I said, yeah. And I looked at the plans and I went, you want to double what you're thinking of spending? And it's like, it's just, they think it's trying to benefit them to try and help that, but it just doesn't really, like, they're doing the right thing by getting the plans made, but it just hasn't been well thought out and executed, so that you've got a set of plans that's actually something you can build, because I think, what is it, like 80% of plans that get drawn don't get built, or something stupid like that, and you could potentially spend tens of thousands of dollars to get plans done that just end up being a piece of paper you throw in the bin. Like, and it's crazy.
How many projects have we seen that end up in that same basket, where it's too expensive to build, and the builder's looked upon as being the bad person because they've delivered the bad news to say, well, it's going to cost double your budget. Where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, it's not fun as a homeowner to go through that process, to find out that you've spent $10,000 or $20,000 to go, we're not even going to do that, or completely redesign it. And I think that comes from an uncomfortable, or some people feel it's an uncomfortable conversation in that very first meeting of saying, hey, what's your budget? And I think the question needs to be tailored a little bit differently to that. But there needs to be an open, honest, transparent communication around budget, because I think, to be honest, out of all the questions I asked in the initial meeting, I think budget is the most important question, because that ultimately determines whether your project is going to get built or not.
It does.
And whether it's going to be realistic. And it's not about us trying to figure out your budget so we can come in just under it or on it to match up figures. It doesn't work like that. It's more about working out what's important to you and how much money you're comfortable spending to try and find something that'll fit within that. So you have a good experience, not the other way around, where it's a bad experience and you've got the dream that you've already built in your head or designed that is no longer achievable. So, yeah.
Yeah, that feasibility before a project even starts really needs to start from that first moment that people have that thought in their head that they want to do something on their house.
Yeah. And there's bugger all information out there that says, hey, do this as a process. Like, there's that much information on the line that can lead homeowners Australia on where to go and who to see first and, what to do and how it all works. But if I could suggest one thing is find a builder that you like and that is suitable for you. Don't just pick a builder on price or, whatever. Pick someone who you like, because they're going to be living in your house for quite some time while they're renovating.
For sure.
And it can get annoying after a while. Like, there's dust and noise and banging and clanging, especially with renos. So, make sure you like the builder you're using.
Totally agree. That's brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So we might find out a little bit more just about you and how to get in contact with you. So people know me. They know I'm running New Realm Homes. Tell us a little bit about you and how people can get in contact with you if they're in Rocky or nearby and they're looking for someone to come and have a chat with them and have that honest conversation that we're talking about.
So I'm in Rocky. I'm on all the socials, refinespace.com.au, Facebook, Instagram. If you want to keep updated with our daily, weekly projects that we're doing, there's always daily stories for that. And feel free to send us a message on one of them and we can go from there. So,
little mini celebrity that we call Joel Miner.
Mini celebrity. Yes, the content on the website is pretty heavy. I'm pretty heavy on socials, so I just like to showcase what we do and try and give people information as to, whether they're in here in Rockhampton or somewhere else, they can use the information as they please.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love seeing your stuff all over social media. It's great stuff. Great stuff. So we might. I was sort of thinking. We've gone down the rabbit hole a little bit on the budget talk. So people can get a little bit confused, but I want to try something a little bit different, and let's see if we can take our builder's hat off for a moment and, without us knowing what the costs of what we want to build in our homes, we've touched on it a little bit so far, but where would we, if we weren't a builder, where would we start, and what things would you suggest would be great to be prepared for when it comes to those conversations that you do have initially when you start thinking about you want to do something to your house or build a house?
Great question. I think, you don't need to know, whether you know exactly what you want or what you don't want, but I find there's a lot of people, I guess, that don't know what they want, but they have a bit of an idea, and I think that's important to think things through to make sure that you're clear on what you're trying to explain to the person that's going to be building it. So I think it's good to be clear on what you want and how the space is going to be used for and who's going to be using it. It doesn't have to be so much about selections and fittings, but I think it's good to get an understanding of how you want to use it and what it's going to be used for. So as for getting information, that's a hard one. When you put it in that shoes, you can see as a home, people could search on the web, on the net, but there's that much information out there, it can just confuse you and overwhelm you and you'll be like, I don't want to build. So I think it's important for you to try and find the right person as a builder. I think that was more important, to make sure that person understands what you're after and knows that they've got your back, that can help and assist you and give you ideas and all that stuff, rather than just saying, yeah, we can build that. We can build a deck. It's easy. But what's a deck going to be used for? Quite often you'll find that if you ask enough questions, what they're really wanting isn't what they're really wanting. It's just a piece of what they're wanting, but this is what they think will work for them. So, which goes back to prioritising what's important to you and making sure that you have a very clear understanding of what you're after, but you're open to ideas to, make it work, which goes back to them questions of what's it going to be used for and how it's going to be used and who's going to be using it, because that can drastically alter the fact of a deck at the back versus something that doesn't need to be as big or as, could be used in a different space for a very similar outcome. So,
Yeah, definitely.
but yeah, it is a hard question to try and find information. I think a lot of that has to come from the builder that they're using.
Yeah, for sure.
Sort of guide them. Like that's, as a builder, I feel like that's our responsibility. Like we're the professionals that do it every day. Show them the process. Like these are the steps we need to take. This is what we need to do. So that they've got a pathway to follow, and it feels like it's not a big, overwhelming journey to get from start to finish.
Yeah.
It's like, let's just focus on the first step
Yeah, for sure.
and the next step. One thing at a time.
One thing at a time, definitely. I found that having that conversation about the vision with prospective clients and subsequently turning into clients, one recent project that the client, simple vision, they just wanted a space that they could use that was going to give them the ability to have more people come over to their house and have their family come over and spend more time with them, and give the husband a little bit more space for his toys. Pretty simple little vision. They didn't come in with a particular budget in mind, but the vision was there, and the whole conversation revolved around finding out what they really wanted to do from that first couple of conversations about, we want to do a little garage and an outdoor entertaining area. With that conversation, then, okay, what are you going to be doing there? How are you going to be using it? What kind of people are going to be spending that time with you? And it was interesting nutting it out into those little bits, and for them to experience getting those questions asked compared to, what's your budget? And the other questions are, how big do you want it to be? What roof do you want to put on it? Well, we're not even looking at that, because we've got to find out all the information so that we can give you the best outcome, and then we can touch on the budget and make sure that we can get everything to work within your budget.
Yeah.
Instead of going down the other road, which is, we'll get it drawn up.
Yeah.
And then you find out you can't afford to build it.
And as a builder, we should have a rough guide. Like, I know it's very hard for us to price rough guides, but like, you can base past projects, like, ask your builder what projects have they done that's similar to this. Is there something they can give you a ballpark? Because like, some people just want to know, like, am I even remotely close to thinking what I'm wanting is going to be remotely close to my budget? Like, if we're wanting to do a deck that's a 6x6 with a roof over the top, that's second story, that, we've got 20 grand to spend. It's just like, well, like that's just completely out of the question unless you want to increase the budget. Like, and some people want that, just want a ballpark to be able to either have a target to aim for, or try and figure out whether they're seriously it's possible to do. So
yeah, definitely.
So you'd see it, and that, like you said, you got to ask the right questions to be able to get that information off them to work out where they're sitting and what potentially could happen, I guess.
Definitely.
So, but yes,
all the fun stuff that we get to experience on a daily basis, mate.
yes.
No, that's awesome, mate. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Joel. It's been great to have that chat with you, mate. And thank you to the listeners having a listen. And if you want to get in contact with either Joel or myself, and you have any further questions on anything that we've touched on today, happy to revisit this in another podcast and have a little bit more of a chat about it, and get other guests on that might have a little bit of a different insight into what's going on out there as well. So if you want to get in touch with Joel, all of his information is going to be in the description for the podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or Audible or anything like that, it'll be in the description underneath the video in YouTube as well. And when it comes to it, either follow, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff that you get to do on Spotify and Audible or YouTube, and you'll be able to find our contact details in there as well. underneath. Click on any of those links, and you'll be able to get in touch with us. So, once again, thanks, Joel, for joining me. It's been a blast having a chat with you, mate. And yeah, you take care.
No worries. Appreciate it, Hugh. Thanks for your time.
No, thank you, mate.
Good.
Appreciate it. Cheers, mate.